So those were some pretty crazy responses.
Very angry
to losses. Very angry responses. We thought that'd be a fun way to set up. Hopefully you have never responded in a way like that. But the truth of the matter is, we all know what it feels like to have been dealt a loss. We're a little bit more mature about our decisions and how we respond.
Right.
I hope.
I would hope so.
But that's really what we talked about this past week on Big Picture Week 2, talking about how the tension that sometimes life just feels like a series of wins and losses. And then what did that mean for Joseph? What does that mean for us? And so we're going to continue that conversation.
So you left us off with a video of when we can't see the big, or you left us with the bottom line of when you can't see the bigger picture, remember and remind ourselves that God is with us. And toward the end of your video, you left us with the question, what's one way I know that God is with me? This is community group, this is small group, so we've got small group questions as per usual. So what was one time that you felt just completely out of control? Everything was out of your control.
Yeah. Well, I guess to elaborate on the story that I shared back in week 1 and dealing with the loss and feeling out of control, it was my senior year of high school. I had quit playing basketball just so that I could focus on track and field and High School Musical. We can talk about that later if we need to.
Movie?
Not that I'm pre Zac Efron. This is before all of that. But yeah, and so the high jump and the triple jump was my focus. And I knew I wasn't going to go far with the long jump, but I was really excited, and I found myself at the district meet qualifications for state, all rided on how I did here. And that day, the qualifiers for triple jump and high jump were at the exact same time. They overlapped one another. And one of them was at one end of the football field, and one of them was at like the opposite end on the side of the football field. And I had no control over the timing of the event. I had no control over the placement of the event. I couldn't get an exception for qualifying for either one of those two events. And so I would high jump, run across the football field, triple jump, run across the football field, high jump, and on one of those treks back and forth, I hit something on the football field and pulled my groin and knocked me out for the last two, or the however many last jumps that I had, and I didn't go on. Stopped right there at district.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where what could have been, what might have been had that situation not played itself out like that, but none of those things were in my control. Despite having trained and prepared so hard for that moment.
I mean, naturally, you would have gone to the Olympics.
Clearly,
that's where you would have ended up.
Absolutely.
So as a lot can happen in those 100 yards that you're running from spot to spot, we're out of control. How'd that make you feel when that moment happened?
Yeah, I mean, we say devastating in those kinds of situations, and I don't know. It was just, it just hurts. Feel like you were cheated or robbed. It felt like it was taken out of my control. So a little bit of helplessness there, and just kind of it just sinks the weightiness of not being able to have completed what you had trained or prepared for. In those situations, it just feels lonely, helpless, just upsetting. All of that. So it's heavy.
Okay, so you are older, right? You've experienced more in your life. You've had a whole lot of different circumstances and probably some difficult circumstances. So has there been a difficult circumstance in your life where you felt as if God wasn't there?
Yeah, I'm sure there has been, because the problem of going through a difficult circumstance is that we feel alone. The instances that the feelings that we talked about of wrecking district is that we feel as though we're alone and we're helpless. I think that what experience has taught me is that there's been times, even as silly as like right now, where I can't find my planner and it's nowhere to be found, and I've looked everywhere.
Heard this all day.
I know that I'm not like outside of God's presence. You know what I mean? Because being able to look back and live through difficult losses or silly losses. Often I've seen even how God was with me, even though I didn't feel it in that moment. And so it's always been helpful to go, okay, and after the emotions calm down, it's one of those things that help the emotions calm down, just reminding myself, hey, God is with me. God is with me. He didn't promise that life would be easy. He just promised that he would be with us.
So in those difficult scenarios, why do you think it's so difficult to feel God walking alongside us? If, like you said, he always is.
I think it's because our emotions, some of us are just emotional people, and I think our emotions can get the better of us, clearly, a lot of times. And I think also, like we talked about back in week 1, we can get so narrow-sighted in those times and only see our perspective. And we can only see our loss right then and there. And we can only think about, and we can have those negative thoughts just flooding into our mind of like, why would a good God let me go through a bad thing? Or if God, all those things just begin to, if we're not careful and we've not grounded ourselves in Scripture and not in a great community to encourage one another, we can just begin to get ourselves down. I don't think that we naturally drift towards God. We've got to work towards that. And that's really what our XP for this week is all about, to be able to help us do that. So there's another PDF file or a JPEG file or a download file or a link in this. This image is going to pop up on the screen, probably in this as well. But honestly, that's what that is designed to help you and me through. It is a collection of passages from all throughout Scripture. And these promises and these scriptures that can help us remind ourselves that God is with you. God is with me. And so they're a great collection of them. And there's a lot, but the encouragement and the activity there is to read through them and pray as you're doing so that one of them, at least one of them, would just resound with you really, really well. Just jump off the page, so to speak. And then write it down somewhere. Begin to memorize it. Like we said last week, put it on the mirror in your bathroom or make a post about it on social media. But allow these to be your thoughts when you're in a difficult time to help you center yourself around the knowledge and the fact of who God is. And that will help us out. And if you're confused, you're seeing, if you're not seeing the bigger picture, something is forming. As we continue through the weeks in big picture. So, listen, I want to leave you with the question for you to personally answer between now and next week. How does knowing God promises to be with you? That sounded weird. How does knowing God promises to be with you no matter what change the way you see your circumstances and God? Because honestly, it should. It should change those two things. And so take some time to write that out and to think about that. Ask your sibling about it. Maybe even start a conversation with your mom or dad. Because I guarantee you, as the old man in the group, this stuff still happens. And it's something that we still continue to go through. So as a middle schooler, it's so good for you to think about this and a great conversation to have with those around you. Until then, hey, we'll probably drop some more videos up here this week, but we'll definitely be back on Sunday for Big Picture Week 3.